We're in the second week of a series on the family. And as I had mentioned last week, if you're new to our church, normally a series here is about taking a text of Scripture and walking through it expositionally. For the next 8 weeks, this week and the 7 following, we're going to be in a topical series on the family. And so we'll be referencing several Scriptures, although today we are going to be in Deuteronomy chapter 6. You can turn to Deuteronomy chapter 6. This morning we're going to talk about 7 disciplines, 7 things that effective families get right, 7 marks of effective families, best practices for them. Let me begin by perhaps setting the table for this message by telling you a story. By 1968, Robertson McQuilkin had reached really the pinnacle of his career path. Earned doctorate, recently installed as the president of Columbia College in South Carolina. He would spend 22 years effectively growing that to be a world-class institution dedicated to training men and women for not only ministry roles, but impact through the community, through their faith, all around the world. By March of 1990, life had taken an uncertain turn for him. His wife, Muriel, suffering from Alzheimer's disease, deteriorating rapidly. He called an assembly of the college, I should say, and he read out his resignation letter. Here in part is what he said. My dear wife Muriel has been in failing health for about 8 years. So far, I've been able to carry both her ever-growing needs and my leadership responsibilities here at Columbia. But recently it has become apparent that Muriel is contented most of the time she is with me, and almost none of the time I am away from her. And it's not just discontent. She is filled with fear, even terror that she has lost me, and always goes in search of me when I am gone. Then she may be full of anger when she cannot get to me. So it is clear to me that she needs me now full time. And with that, his 22-year tenure at the helm of a growing college institution was over. His resignation letter has since become a classic. It is accessed millions of times because it speaks so deeply to the values of a family. And I will tell you that Dr. McQuilkin did not walk into the assembly that day having just thought about what he would do. There had been foundation stones laid in that family for decades prior to that ultimately made this a fairly straightforward, difficult, but simple decision to make. I want us to understand that healthy families, thriving families, families that are getting things right in an ever-changing, rapidly, in some cases, deteriorating culture, recognize that they are doing a few things well. They're getting some basics right. And whatever unique situation we find ourselves facing, if we can get those basics right, all of the complexities tend to go away, and there's a pretty clear understanding of what we should do. I want to talk this morning about best practices of healthy families. And let me begin by giving you 3 assumptions I'm bringing to this talk. In other words, what are 3 things, as I have a chance to talk to you the next 35 minutes or so, I'm thinking that's driving me in the direction to which I am headed? The first is that no family is perfect. Aim for improvement. There will be some who will look at this list of 7 and say, way too high, way too much, can't do it. Well, the goal is not perfection, certainly not this side of glory. I have said so many times, because it's so true, we are fallen people, married to fallen people, rearing fallen children in a fallen world. But that's not an excuse that we can't be working toward improvement. Wherever we find ourselves today, and in whatever situation, I recognize that nearly half of our congregation are singles. Perfect. We're still in family. We still have very important relationships to us, and these are foundational principles to any healthy relationship. I recognize that many of you have gone through the pain and the agony of divorce, and you're in a second or a third marriage, and it's been painful in the past, and perhaps you found yourself facing some of the same issues. I'm saying to you, work for improvement. Some, maybe like I, have been married for decades. We're about to, in the best sense of that word, she'll be at 11 o'clock, and you're not going to tell her, right? No, in the back, wonderful. But you get to that place where you say, all right, at what point does marriage reach perfection and I don't have anything else to learn? I don't know. I'll let you know when I get there. And if your mom and dad, Joe, were back from Florida, what, 60, how many years? 65? Marriage? I know Ed. I know him well. He's still working on it. Right? Losing his hearing has helped him a lot in 65 years of marriage. Yeah, he is, exactly. So, but wherever we find ourselves, it's not an excuse to say, let me live in the backwash of my life as it is now. Aim for improvement. God has called us, if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, God has called us to grow in our sanctification. That's a big word that simply means becoming more like Christ. And often our family can be both the most painful, intimate, and most profitable place where that growth begins to take place. Second thing I would say, no family is hopeless. Never give up. Some, perhaps, you're here, you're watching online, some of you are in really tough situations. Or you came from a family where dysfunction would be a kind way to place it, to say it. I'm saying to us, there is no sense of giving up. There is hope. Whatever you find yourself facing in your family situation, or as a single person just really pining away for a relationship and finding that hopeless, as a married person, continually running up against the same kinds of issues, it is not hopeless. Do not give up. Some of you may have walked into this place looking for divorce court. I have seen that happen in other situations, and I am telling you the grace of God in Jesus Christ is stronger than the hopeless feeling you have now. Be patient. Do not give up. Third thing I would say to us, no family is bulletproof. Pray for protection. Some of us may feel like, life's going pretty well. Seems like we worked out the early years of marriage, sort of how the roles work out. I kind of anticipate her, and she anticipates me, and the kids are mostly grown. And listen, disaster can strike if we take it easier, if we quit doing the kinds of things that brought us to this place of contentment. And so let's not let pride go before destruction. Let's not let a haughty spirit go before a fall. Let's have the humility to recognize, by the grace of God, our family is what it is. And our family continually stands in need of the grace of God. Maybe it's for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, but no family is bulletproof. So pray for protection. Now, Deuteronomy chapter 6. We're going to look from verse 4 all the way through verse 25. What I'm going to do this morning, I'm not going to do a deep dive on the text. What I'm going to do is sort of read through and make some comments as we go, as we walk through what are these best practices. Because we're going to find this is not something new that I've discovered, of course. From the very beginning of God's creation, these are things that have lent themselves towards good results over the long haul. And so Deuteronomy 6, we find ourselves with the people of God on the edge of the promised land, ready to go in, ready to fulfill the promises God has given. And Moses gathers together the people after having led them for 40 years. And he says, now here's a few things I want you to remember. Of all of your experience of being delivered from slavery and redeemed by the God who called you and now following him for an entire generation. And here's a younger generation. And Moses said, get this stuff right. Understand, if you're going to live in a place of God's blessing, these things have to be in order. And so Deuteronomy chapter 6, beginning in verse 4, the technical term for this paragraph is called the Shema. S-H-E-M-A, Shema. And the reason why it's called that is because in the original, in Hebrew, the first word, hear, is Shema, and so it just became known for that. It was the shorthand for saying, you want to know the most basic truth of a relationship with our covenant-giving God, it's this. And so Moses, gathering the people, said, chapter 6, verse 4, hear. Listen to what I'm about to say. What's going to be written down for generations to come. Pay attention. Hear, O Israel. The Lord, now I've said this before, but I want to drive it home to us. When you see all caps, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, that is what used to be translated Jehovah or Yahweh. It is God's promise-keeping name. It is an intimate relational name. He's not just saying the God, if there is one, or the God out there, or your religion as your God and our religion as our God. He's saying the God, personal God, who redeemed you, who made promises to you, who's brought you to the cusp of the promised land, and the God who will take you into the promised land, that personal being has this to say to you. The Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And these words that I command you today shall be on your, not your wall, not written down in a book, they shall be on your heart. The top, I'm not necessarily thinking in descending order, but I think the top value, the best practice of healthy families is this: we call our families to costly purpose. Costly purpose. Moses, before he sent those millions of refugees into the promised land, said, here's the thing you've got to keep straight above everything else. Love the redeeming God who saved you. Love Him. Some folks have the mistaken concept that there's the Old Testament wrathful, angry God who's ready to shoot lightning bolts. And then there's the New Testament Jesus God who's everybody's buddy, like I vote for that God. Well, that's totally wrong. At the most fundamental expression of Old Testament faith is the command to love. Amen. And to love a personal God who's redeemed, and to love Him with all of our heart, our soul, and our might. What am I offering my family that is beyond myself? To what am I calling my wife and my children that trumps our comfort or our ease or our pursuit of self-interest? Moses is going to go on and say there are going to be all kinds of blessings that are going to come your way. And you cannot forget, in the midst of pursuit of life, in the midst of the acquisition of blessing, that it is the loving the Lord your God that is the top priority. And so we call our family to this. This matters. We understand there is a costly purpose to life. As great as it is to be in a marriage that is healthy and thriving and have children who are healthy and growing, that is secondary to a pursuit of loving the Lord your God. Because if the end of life, if the end of family is that we be healthy, wealthy, and wise, then the vast majority of families are failures on the face of it. But if the goal of family is that I as a husband and my wife and my children and my extended family love the Lord their God with all their heart, their soul, and their might, then there is success to be found in the most difficult of places. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you find yourself in a season of marriage where the best advice that you're getting is leave or end it or walk out because it's hopeless, there's a higher calling than that. Question would be then, how can I pursue a costly purpose in this most difficult of circumstances? Or we have children who are very young and we're thinking about shaping them. More about that, not only later in this message, but in a few weeks from now. But am I mostly driven by, don't irritate me, I want to see this next shot? Or are we willing to step aside and take the time and recognize there are precious truths that need to be delivered to our children, and the higher purpose than my comfort at this moment with the remote in my hand is what am I teaching that next generation? Single person, there's a costly purpose above eat, drink, and be merry. Are you ordering your life and your job and your entertainment and your relationships and your media consumption and your use of your wealth in such a way that it reflects, honestly, I love the Lord my God with all my heart, my soul, and my might? It may be, and again, an entire week on singleness coming up, it may be that you are the most fruitful person for the kingdom of God. You have more free time than most married people I know. Is it demonstrated that there's a costly purpose in my life beyond get off at 5 o'clock and come home about 1 a.m.? Married person, as we face the inevitable good and bad and sometimes ugly in marriage, am I recognizing that what I'm looking for is not how to get my way, but how to demonstrate my love for Jesus Christ in this moment? See where I talk about this costly purpose? There's a higher calling than comfort. So that the evaluation, listen, Dad, the evaluation on do I take the promotion? Do I take the job? Do I take on this assignment? While it's important that we recognize this is really great for my career path, we also have to stop and give Jesus a vote in this matter. So that can I, through this promotion or job change or ramp up to starting a business, can I demonstrate even in that there is a costly purpose to my life? Jesus is not polite in that he does make demands on our lives. In fact, Jesus was asked by a lawyer near the end of his life, the end of the Jesus life, what's the greatest commandment? Come on, Jesus, you put yourself off as a great teacher. Well, then teach us. Matthew 22. What's the greatest commandment? Boil it down, Jesus. You know what he said? He quoted this. You shall love the Lord your God with all your whole heart, your soul, and you shall love him with all your might. Jesus knew there was a higher costly purpose to his life than even the comfort of his discipleship, and he laid down his life for us. You are probably watching and following sports. It seems like to me, maybe I'm missing it, Joe, but it seems like there's a little more excitement than normal this year in Chicago for sports. It's not the Bulls, right? Yeah, no, it's not the Bulls. Blackhawks, maybe. Well, no, don't say that word yet. They who shall not be mentioned. But White Sox are in what place again? I knew there was one out there. All right, now we'll wander around to those lovable winners. Anybody following the? Yeah, what place are the Cubs? Yeah, right, Kurt. We had that talk out in the hallway. Right, they're in first place, and even if you go back to the Bulls of Joe merely 20 years ago when they were good, or the Bears, the beloved 30 years ago. That hurts. 31 years ago. Every good team. Every team that's going to get to a championship level is going to recognize something very fundamental. You have tremendous talent. You have large egos. You have huge amounts of money passing through those teams. And every single one of those teams, or the ones who are going to win, are going to work toward a larger goal, a costly purpose beyond my ego, my stats, my contract negotiations for next year. They want a trophy. They're going to have to sublimate all of that, submit all of that to the common good of the team for the cause of winning a championship. I'm saying to us, husbands, wives, children, parents, singles, when it comes to our families, we submit all of our decision-making, all of our comfort to the costly purpose of loving the Lord our God with all our heart, our soul, and our might. Healthy families recognize there's a costly purpose. Second, healthy families get this right, relational security. Relational security. This is the idea that while we may disagree at times very loudly, while we may have to learn to live with a lot of I disagree with you, while our children may make choices that are very hurtful to them and hurtful to us, while our spouses at times may be pursuing their own things, at times to the detriment of our family, there is a level of relational security that says, we're going through this together. And let me address directly some of you who've gone through divorce. You recognize the pain of someone walking out. Or you have been through the agony of someone blowing up the family, you're left to pick up the pieces. I understand that. I'm speaking to you in the relationship in which you find yourself now. Put relational security in place. Drive the stake in the ground. We're going to work this out. And even as our children get older and maybe they pursue some of their own paths, we as parents say, you know what? I don't like that. We'll be honest about that. But I love you and I will not give up on you. So that we deliver deep into the soul of our children, deep into the soul of our spouse, deep into the soul of a person with whom we have this close relationship. If you're married, because that's a covenant relationship, I am in this. I am for this. I said it like last week, but it's so good, I think it bears repeating, that the foundation of marriage in particular is not love. It's not how I feel emotionally, or not how deeply do I feel on my soul for this person. The foundation is the covenant. It's the vow. Do you promise to stay with her as long as you both shall live? That's a covenant. It mirrors exactly the covenant that God has made with us. That's why marriage is laid out the way it is. And then on top of that, in fact, I would say the covenant is what drives and builds the emotion that comes and goes of love. If we get that upside down, the emotion drives the covenant, we will be uncertain at many times. And so if healthy families have relational security in the midst of all kinds of challenges and disappointments, there's a lockdown commitment. We're gonna get through this together. Let me read to you a little further here in Deuteronomy. Look at Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 7 through 9. It's amazing he begins, or it's not amazing, it's interesting. Moses, as he talks to these folks, he begins with the heart. You individual follower of the God who redeemed you, you love him with all of your heart. And it's just in response to how God has loved us with all that he has. And then the immediate overflow is into the family. Verse 7. You shall teach them what? These words that are on your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children. You shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise. See, it's not just get them to church. Trust me, moms, dads, get them to church. Like if they're under your roof, they ought not have much opinion, much option in that matter. But beyond that, when you sit down, when you rise up, when you're having the conversation around the table, when they ask you about a job opportunity or what college shall I go to or all the kinds of things, is this the right person? You know, you have those conversations too. We have a chance to talk a little bit about, well, does this fall in this costly purpose of your life, to love the Lord your God with all your heart? It begins to clarify some things. So relational security, look at chapter 6, verse 8. You shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. It's all very personal, grows right out of our being. Verse 9, you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So if you want to put the Ten Commandments up in your house somewhere, that's great. That's a great way. That's an expression of God's character for sure, and believers ought to be living in accordance with that. But maybe the best thing to put up on our walls is the Shema. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your might. You shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. There has to be a sense of security within the home, and that I as a man or you as a mother, whether you be a single parent or a single person, that the security, the solid foundation of that relationship are promises given and promises intended to be kept. Third, best practices of healthy families. Third, healthy boundaries. Healthy boundaries. Perhaps the greatest gift we'll give our children is the security of knowing mom and dad love enough to set some boundaries. We have a saying around our office we try and live by: clarity reduces anxiety. And so if I can make the boundaries really clear, that will reduce my child's anxiety. Now listen, it's a little secret. None of this is going to be a surprise to you. Kids won't like boundaries. And we uphold the boundary. This is right, this is off limits. This is good, this is bad. This is how, listen, dads, get this one locked down really early on. This is how we speak to mom. These are words that should never come out of your mouth toward mom. Okay, we set the boundaries, loving, firm, not capricious, clear, and then we enforce the boundaries. And here's what's going to happen. They're going to bump up against that over and over and over and over again. And they are likely, at some point in their young adulthood, going to wander way over, hither and yon, outside the boundaries. But guess what's happened in the 18, 20, 25 years we've had them? We have begun to put some steel in their souls where they may recognize this is the boundary even if they themselves don't live up to it. And how many of us recognize boundaries and we still cross them from time to time? It's a powerful gift we give to our children. It's a powerful gift within a marriage relationship to say, listen, here are the ground rules. And for husbands and wives, those need to be worked out, often painfully, those first 4 or 5 years of marriage. Here's how we make decisions. Look at Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 10 through 15. Again, okay, so blessing and costly purpose and all of that. And then Moses begins to lay out some expectations, some boundaries for this new change. They're going into a new life. And when the Lord your God brings you into the land that he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, to give you, with great and good cities you did not build, and houses full of good things that you did not fill, and cisterns that you did not dig, that's wells, and vineyards and olive trees you did not plant, and when you eat and are full, stop. What's he talking about? Prosperity. You've paid the price. You've gone to school. You've slogged it out in the mailroom. You've got the promotion. You've moved whenever the company had you move. The children have come along, and you and they have reached a certain level of blessing. That could be health, that could also be prosperity financially. You own a few things now. Some of the goals on your list have been checked off. At that point, be careful. Look at what he says here. Verse 12, take care lest you forget the Lord. Again, there's that personal name for God. Lest in the acquisition and pursuit and acquisition of all that you have achieved, you lose sight of the very one who redeemed you and gave you every single gift you have. Take care lest you forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. It's amazing how many times in this whole section he goes right back to that conversion moment. Do you remember when God rescued you? You recognize you're not who you used to be? Don't forget. It is the Lord. Verse 13, it is the Lord. Again, the personal covenant is the Lord your God you shall fear. Him you shall serve. I'm convinced this is the reference Jesus was making when he said, you cannot serve God and money. You will love the one and hate the other, or cling to the one and despise the other. Jesus just resurrecting or just reminding God's people of a promise and of a command that had been made centuries prior, because God's people, we don't change. Human nature doesn't change. There's that tendency to say, look what I have accomplished. And we ought to have a great sense of pride in that, but we always have to be anchored, tethered to the reality that God is the one who's given me everything I've earned. Don't forget. Don't let our children think that this is what life's all about. We set some healthy boundaries and say, we don't pursue that stuff. We do pursue this. And if God blesses, so much the better. If he doesn't, here's the boundary, and it doesn't really matter on this side of glory. Man, does that put steel in a soul. Man, does that guard our children from the foolish pursuit of this life that leads us to husks and ashes in our hands in years to come. Verse 14, you shall not go after other gods. A lot of distractions in this life, a lot of things that can replace God in the very center of our soul. You shall not go after other gods, the gods of the peoples who are around you. Look at verse 15. For the Lord your God in your midst is a jealous God. You might look at that and say, is he insecure? Is he capricious? Is he mean? Well, let's put it into the context it was meant for. Husbands, your wife steps out. Aren't you jealous? Aren't we going to have something to say both to our wife and whoever that other numbskull is? We are. Why? We love our spouse. And we're committed to them through covenant. And that is exactly how God's relationship with us works. And when God's people wander hither and yon, pursuing all kinds of worthless things they think will make them happy, God says there'll be an accounting for that. The anger of the Lord your God be kindled against you. He'd destroy you from off the face of the earth. Meaning he could take away those very blessings that you pursued in that promised land. Do our kids know that there are healthy boundaries in life? This is so important in our culture today because it seems like we want to cast off all restraint. Some good things have come out of that. There's been some really wonderful advances when it comes to race relations and things like that, and the care we provide for the most needy, but some really foolish pursuits have happened as well. And the family that loves the Lord their God with all their heart, their soul, and their might is a family that sets healthy boundaries, clearly marked boundaries. Kids should not be surprised at the boundaries they bump up against. It should be very clear to them. Fourth, families that are healthy, that get it right, provide life-giving truth. Life-giving truth. What I mean by this is not brutality, but honesty. I've told you before, I grew up in an alcoholic's home. I totally get what it is to overlook and pretend that isn't really happening in the home. And one of the gifts my family bequeathed me was a constant battle with trying not to be passive about things in life. And what's so healthy in homes is truth that's life-giving, not brutal, not nasty, not let me knock you down a little bit, but let me tell you the truth in a way that benefits you. Let me tell you the truth in such a way that you know the reality of how life is and where you fit in that life. And so Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 20 through 23, love this. This is so precious. Parents, this is so precious. When your son asks you in time to come, here's looking to the future. Our children will grow up. They'll begin to work stuff out on their own. They'll begin to have some serious questions about your faith and your life and the values that you've brought to bear over the years. And when your son asks you in time to come, what is the meaning of the testimonies and the statutes and the rules the Lord our God has commanded you? Hey, why is church on Saturday night or Sunday? Why do we write our budget such that we can be generous for gospel mission? Why do you take extra time to bring people into your home to host a small group? Or you take one night and you're involved in all these friends you have. And you sit around with the Bible on your knee and you ask questions, you answer them, and then you pray. Why does that happen? I love that the answer is not because I told you so. That works with 3-year-olds. It's foolish after they're much older than that. And look at their response. I love it. I love their response. Again, the fathers are to respond in this way. You shall say, verse 21, chapter 6, verse 6, you shall say to your son, and he goes to the conversion experience. I was lost, now I'm found. I was a slave, God set me free. It grows out of the very first thing, costly purpose. Because I'm a redeemed child of God, these are my priorities, son, daughter. This is why it's important. You know, we don't have our first loyalty to this church or that denomination or the other church or this catechism or this list of do's and don'ts. We have our first loyalty to the God who redeemed us. And everything grows out of that. We were Pharaoh's slaves in Egypt, and the Lord, again, the personal name, the promise-keeping God. The Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand. Do our kids know how great God is? That's a very quiet response. In other words, you lose the job, you face the health scare, you're going through a divorce, your children are going haywire, these things happen in life. Do they at that moment see someone who is absolutely founded on a rock? My God is able. Dads, this is what will be delivered to our children. This is the truth for life. The Lord brought us out with a mighty hand, and the Lord showed signs and wonders, great and grievous against Egypt and against Pharaoh and his household before our eyes. We saw God triumph in this hostile culture. That's the idea. I don't have to get fired up about it. I don't have to march on Washington. I'm going to say in my home, we serve God, and I have never seen him to fail. Kids, get that. In verse 23, again, he goes back to this issue of how that strong God redeemed me from my dead-end ways, and he brought us out from there, and that he might bring us in and give us the land that he swore to give to our fathers. He kept his promises. Life-giving truth. Tell the truth in love. Husbands, calm down first, but then say it. You need to say it to her. Gently, but you're only going to get angry and feel more victimized and more withdrawn if you don't say it to her. Wives, listen. Hear. Get off the high horse. Walk life with him. You're not better than him. He doesn't need you to be a mother. That's off script, Joe, but it's true. Husbands, stop being dolts. You understand what they're saying. Lean in. Be humble. Go through life with her. Do not demean. That is not a healthy way to love the Lord your God with all your heart, your soul, and your might. Healthy families have life-giving truth in the home. Let me give you two more quickly, and then I want to focus on the last one for a couple of moments. Now, just out of honesty, Joe, I respect your intelligence, and also you're going to read this and say, Scott, that's not in Deuteronomy, so let me just say, yeah, you're right, it's not. The next two I made up. Now, hold on. Long years of experience of pastoring and marriage and parenting, but also I'll give you some biblical warrant I think is accurate. I just don't think you can find it in Deuteronomy, and so I don't want to play with the text. I want to be honest with the text. But the next one I think is really important is warmth. There's a sense of warmth in the relationship in the home. Now, I get it. People have all kinds of backgrounds, and some people are the lovey-dovey, huggy, warmy, kissy, and that's great. Some people are like, oh, that creeps me out. Stop it. I need my space. And I say that because I grew up in northern Indiana, and I pastored there as an associate pastor. I was kind of you're Austin Adams. I was that guy at a New Life Church for years, and then came to Melrose Park and all these Italians. This is all Italians, right, Joe? And I spent 5 years, and so I went back to, going back to that church for some reason, an anniversary or something, and I get back to the church, and I walk in, and it's like, hey! And I'm giving them kisses and hugs, and then they're all just like, and finally somebody said, Scott, what happened to you? I've been Italianized. That's what happened to me. I don't know. And you know what? They liked it. Come on, dads. Come on, moms. Initiate. Just develop that sense of warmth, a sense of warmth in the home. I'm going to tell you, some of the times when there's discipline, parents, there's discipline, and it's icky, the IQ, ickiness quotient is high. That's the time when a parent initiates and holds that child close and affirms, even though boundaries have been crossed and discipline or punishment has been meted out, there is total relational security. And I'll demonstrate that by the warmth. I love you, and I hold you for this. And husbands and wives, just the little disciplines in life of grabbing a hand or putting an arm around a shoulder really tears down walls. Fifth, or is this sixth? Sixth? All right, let's do sixth. Thanks. When I get beyond three, I kind of lose track here. And so sixth is laughter. It's a tough crowd. All right, well, yeah, where's that in the Bible? Well, Proverbs 17:22. I can give it to you in the King James, because I learned it as a kid. A merry heart doeth good like medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. I am telling you, the longer I live, the more I'm convinced the clearest indication of mental health is humor. Now, Jeremy, gave you a chance last week, all right? So do you know the difference between a lily and an iris? Yeah, I don't either. And so my wife, guys, are you with me when you say you try and do something nice and? Yeah, right? Exactly. Kurt, thanks, bro. I'm really going out on a limb. I don't even know if I can tell this story at 11 o'clock when she's here. So, in passing, she says, not to me, but we were talking, she says, nice weather comes along, I need to thin out the lilies in the flower bed in the front of the house. Come on. All the wives are like, no, you didn't. Well, yeah, I did. And so I was on a roll, I don't remember, one evening this week when it got nice weather, and I'd done some stuff out in the back where it's like I'm king of the backyard, and I can rake and I can throw dead grass away. That's sort of the level of my skill. And I had the shovel, and I'm walking around the side to go into the garage, and out of the corner of my eye, I see lilies. Big bunches of them. The warm weather, finally they're here, and it's like, this is great. I'm going to make my wife's day. I'm going to move those lilies. She said, just put them along the edge of the woods there, and if you just throw them there, they'll start growing. And so I dug them up, and I went beyond just throwing them there. I dug a little spot, and I put them in, I tapped it down, and put the soil over it, right? Right? And Mike, I know you were landscaping for like 100 years or something, but she got home from the store. I don't know how women do it. Both hands full, walked by, not even looked at it, and she said, "What'd you do to the irises?" And what do I say? Bill, what am I going to say? Nothing. Yeah, no. I didn't do anything. I didn't touch the irises. I just moved. I was like totally blew what I was hoping honey, I moved the lilies for you. She's like, no, you didn't. I'm like, no, I did. Oh, it just occurred to me finally. And so, and it's that moment. Did I say it was her grandmother's irises? Isaiah, you remember her dead grandmother's irises? Yeah. Yeah, I know, right? It was just, and so she was very gracious to me, and whatever she was really feeling in her heart, she said, well, okay, thank you. And then I saw her later weeping in the corner, looking at the soon-to-be dead irises out there. And so, but laughter, I can't tell you the number of times in our home, right? Around the table, laughter has diffused really tense situations. And so just bring that into the home. Seventh, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 24 and 25, last section of this chapter. A legacy is the word. Legacy is the word. What am I bringing my family that is going to outlive me? Okay, and so the end of chapter 24, verse 24 and 25 really looks to the future. And it really is the ultimate answer to the why question. Why do we do this? Why do we care about healthy families? And so the Lord, I'm again here, Deuteronomy 6, verse 24. The Lord commanded us to do all these statutes, do all these things, to fear the Lord our God, listen, for our good always. Do we get that? In fact, that he might, here's the legacy, he might preserve us alive as we are to this day. You want to live the best kind of life. You want to pass that along to your children and grandchildren. That's going to happen when you love the Lord, when you do his will. We love him with all of our heart. It's a legacy that outlives us. Verse 25, love this. And it will be righteousness for us. It's the right kind of life. It's the right reflection of the character of the God who redeemed us. It will be righteousness for us if we are careful to do all this commandment before the Lord our God as he has commanded us. We just always think legacy. I'm not just thinking what happens tomorrow. I'm thinking in 10 years, what will my children learn about the life I'm living right now? In 50 years, when they plant me next to the irises, what are they going to say about me? Let me give you 4 closing considerations as you look to apply this. You're like, Scott, you gave us 7, 4, that's 11. Well, you're getting your money's worth today. How's that? And so, healthy families are intentional. They're intentional. You will not accidentally have a healthy family, not one that loves the Lord. It requires thoughtful consideration about the choices we make. Do not simply buy all of the cultural baggage. Be thoughtful. Be discerning about the choices you make in the way you order your marriage, the choices you make or we make in the way we order our children or rear our children, the choices that we make. Second, healthy families are demanding. Jesus is not polite in the sense that he will make demands on us. This is not the easy path. Swimming cross-culture upstream has never been an easy path, and it's always been the calling of the follower of Jesus Christ. Expect opposition. You hold firm as a husband, you hold firm as a wife, you hold firm as a parent, you will have pushback. It's okay. It's almost a mark that we're getting something right. Bring your best efforts to bear. Third, healthy families are a marathon. This is the encouragement I gave last week. Don't go home and announce, I heard Pastor Scott preach something. It's going to be different around here now. Just go home and live it. They'll figure it out. And that's going to require commitment over weeks and months and years. And you probably are not going to untangle the relational knot you may find yourself in. You're not going to probably untangle that today. Just be patient. It's a marathon. Fourth, it's rewarding. I guess that's my way of saying it's worth it. I'm going to ask the worship team, go ahead and guys, make your way back up here now. We're going to lead or have a song to close, but can I tell you the rest of the story with Robertson McQuilkin? 1990, he resigned and spent the next decade taking care of his wonderful wife, Muriel. So many people were shocked by his resignation that they wanted to know, help us understand why you would make a choice like this. And so we went to cover that in his resignation letter. Perhaps it will help you understand if I shared with you what I shared at the time of my announcement of my resignation in the assembly. The decision was made in a way 42 years ago when I promised to care for Muriel, quote, in sickness and in health till death do us part. So as I told the students and faculty, as a man of my word, integrity has something to do with it. But so does fairness. She has cared for me fully and sacrificially all these years. If I cared for her for the next 40 years, I would not be out of her debt. Duty, however, can be grim and stoic. And here he just sort of warmed to the subject. There is more. I love Muriel. She is a delight to me. Her childlike dependence and confidence in me, her warm love, occasional flashes of that wit I love and relish so much, her happy spirit and tough resilience in the face of her continual distressing decline. I do not have to care for her. I get to care for her. It is a high honor to care for so wonderful a person. And love will fortify us to do the things we thought we were never capable of, which is why the highest foundation for a family is love the Lord your God with all your heart. Let me pray for you. Father, this morning, I pray for those discouraged, feeling hopeless, that they would find a sense of relief and hope. Father, for those enjoying the best of relationships here on earth, that would be a continual feast for them. But Lord, that they would also have the good sense to know that as times come and difficulties arise, they will not change one bit in their love for you. Father, for relationships that are frayed or single people who are lonely, God, that we would find, even in the most difficult of places, our love for you sustains us and clarifies our decision-making process. And God, give us your grace, I pray. I ask this in Jesus' name. And all God's people agreed by saying, amen.